Hi everyone, we are here to explore the vagus nerve, emotions and polyvagal theory. Just to mention, I have prepared a fair amount on emotions here. It's been quite challenging experience for me in the last couple of weeks, so I just wanted to share some of my new discoveries and um, new avenues of perceiving reality. And polyvagal, yeah, I'll mention, and feel free if you have any questions, if things are not clear or anything might not be answered, or I might not have all the answers. That's also more like. So yeah, that's the kind of context for today. So Vegas, but let's start with Vegas. I think to me it's the simplest and easiest thing because I've been studying Vegas for a long time and I still know very little about it. But um, just within the context of our work, within the therapeutic setting and connection with others, which is very much in line with emotional states as well as polyvagal theory. Um, I think we can, safe to say. Um, okay, so probably you are familiar with vagus. Vagus nerve is a 10th cranial nerve. It's the longest nerve in the body, and it had a number of different names like pneumogastric nerve and wandering nerve and so on. It's been, extensively researched even since 18th century. Darwin researched it, and including he researched emotions as well. And the Stephen Porges, he developed the polyvagal theory based on the vagus nerve and the branches of vagus and functioning on vagus and so on. So it is really, really essential part of us, vagus nerve. It's connected with nearly everything in the body. And when we talk vagus, we need to understand there are two branches. It's not a single nerve. It branches in two, so it's a left and right vagus. Polyvagal theory talks about anterior and posterior as well, or ventral and dorsal vagus. So just to say the ramifications of this nerve are vast, and they cover our throat, our chest area, heart area, lungs, diaphragm, intestines, and so on. And 80 to 90% of the vagus nerve are the afferent fibers, meaning it's a sensory nerve and brings the information from the periphery of the body towards the brain stem. And further, it's been then deciphered with the thalamus, insula, and other parts of the brain, deciphering what the experience is that we are sensing around us and within us. And in vagus nerve, often we hear about the regulation and downregulation. It's closely related to our connection and engagement with others, safety, resources, inner state. So all of these fundamental elements of our life experience are affecting the vagus nerve, and the state of vagus nerve affects our experience. So it kind of works together. So just it's not going to be the whole anatomy class on vagus, but it's useful to understand there are the lateral branches and ventral and posterior part of the nerve of the branch of the vagus, But the vagus starts from the brain stem and particular part of the olive within the brain stem and the pyramidal tract, and then descends through the jugular foramen, which is the opening of the cranium, and then descends laterally between C2 or cervical vertebra 2, bilaterally downwards. And as I mentioned before, covers and connects with the vast systems, neurological systems that regulate our viscera and different organs that I mentioned earlier. So the reason that we might experience often dysregulation of the vagus, so we might be hypersensitive or hyperactive or depressed, or might go into a hyper or hypo state, can be that we might feel unsafe, that there is something in the environment that threatens us, or we feel pressured. However, in a recent conference I was in Tuscany, in Florence, I spent profoundly deep 5 days with a group of doctors and chiropractors and scientists and professors who we were talking and practically working on vagus and on the brain structures and so on, and on the body. And it's even though my background is craniosacral work, and I do know there are certain compressions within cervical vertebrae, but one of the teachers were talking how often the C1 or atlas vertebrae, the first cervical vertebra that actually connects the cranium with the spine, there's a compression, and often that happens at birth. And often some of the scarring or the misalignment of that vertebra can cause a number of dysregulatory effects in children and adults later on. I mean, some of you know some of my work with the diaphragm and that connection between C3, 4, and 5 within the cervical spine and the diaphragm and the central tendon, and how important the contraction and emotional expression within that realm are. But just to add another extra complexity, that some of our dysfunction or dysregulation, I would say, it's a better word, is related to physical compression that we might not be aware of. So yes, and that might affect our emotional state. That might affect our blood flow to the brain. Sometimes we might feel foggy or tired, or dysregulated in some way, and that could be some structural imbalance. So just being aware of that aspect as well. On the other hand, I mean, clearly, the way you eat, the way you breathe, the way you walk, the way you function, all of that will be fed through the sensory nerve fibers from the body towards the brain stem and the head brain. Your gut brain will obviously communicate, and your heart brain, and so on. However, the complexity of this vast flux of information it's gathered in the brain stem and in different parts of the brain, and then creates the picture of the general state of the body. And the vagus, it's the main player here. Just to anatomically wise, why it's so important? Because you got the right vagus and the left vagus, and the right vagus goes through the part of the clavicle on the right side alongside the superior vena cava, and then enters into the diaphragm, going into the peritoneum, abdominal cavity, through the hiatus of the esophagus and vena cava, while the left one goes through the esophagus. And the reason why this is important is because some of us experience nausea during particular emotional activation, or during some movement, or some of you, when we do TRE, we feel nausea, and some of our clients. So it's useful to know that could be activation, down regulation, or up regulation of vagus as well. Could be release of the diaphragm that often happens during this process. If someone expresses some emotions, or feels stimulation, or form of could be activation, on even flooding, that can bring a sense of nausea. So just being aware that it's not necessarily a negative thing. It means that the system is changing and shifting. Okay, so this is a nice the diagram of vagus. It's yellow. I mean, it's showing a single fiber, but there are like thousands of fibers, like virtually thousands on each side. So it's extraordinary. And there are a number of branches of vagus, so pharyngeal parts that is related to your throat, as well as the laryngeal part that affects your breathing and your voice. So the way you express yourself, the way your throat might tighten up, that also can be regulated, is regulated by vagus, and actually affects vagus. So often, as our mouth will be dry or throat tight, making sound, swallowing, gargling, stimulating some of these efferent fibers, so mechanical fibers that will affect your brain, your vagus nerve. Aortic nerve, that it regulates the blood from the heart and the lungs. Obviously, got cardiac branches. You got branches within pericardium as well. Yes, thoracic branches, pulmonary plexus, esophageal plexus, anterior vagal trunk, posterior vagal trunk, going down deep into the viscera and intestines. So there is a large system, I would call it, more than just a nerve. Okay, and we see different fibers. What's useful to know, part of the central area that receives that, it's the brain stem. Okay, and then it's been regulated by the brain stem as well. Also, if you want to go deeper, understanding the connection, the dorsal nucleus of the vagus nerve, nucleus ambiguous, nucleus of the solitary tract, all of these nuclei they help regulation of motor fibers as well as the sensory fibers. Yeah, and then there are intraneurons that they decipher which the response it will happen. The spinal trigeminal nuclei, also it's part of the vagus system, and obviously, as some of these information come from the vagus, here we got some of the nuclei of the cranial nerves. We have 12 cranial nerves, and some of these, we got the motor and the sensory nuclei as well. So it's useful for some of you to, if you want to go deeper, to understand some of the positioning and function of them, because you can modify your state of being by, for example, saying something, by breathing in a different way, by listening different music, by washing your face, moving your face. All of these will, by looking around, moving your eyes, eye rotation, all of these will stimulate, oculomotor nerve, trochlear nerve, facial nerves, vestibulocochlear nerve, glossopharyngeal nerve, all of these kind of cranial nerves, they all then descend back to the spinal, to the brainstem, where the nucleus of the solitary tract and the nucleus ambiguous are, and the dorsal vagal nuclei, which regulates the state of the vagus. So in therapeutic intervention, it will be highly effective if you match clients' states at the time. So in order for you to help a client, you might need to help them to orient, for example. That's another often mentioned in the polyvagal theory as well, the eye contact, the prosodity of the voice, tone of the voice, so you're stimulating the vestibulocochlear nerve orientation, looking around. That's the accessory nerve 11th, glossopharyngeal speaking out and then making noise and so on. All of that actually co-regulates and self-regulates and down-regulates your general state. So the value of understanding the vagus and also other cranial nerves and their role and interaction is fundamental and profoundly useful for any therapeutic application. Either you might be a body worker or psychotherapist or yoga teacher or anything at all, or another, the fellow human being that you're sitting in a restaurant or in a bar with another person. So what happens there, the polyvagal theory explains this beautifully. If you're sitting in a restaurant, you're facing another human being most of the time if you're not alone. So hopefully you're not alone, you are in a social engagement with another human being. So you're stimulating that ventral vagal system. So that's the part that also helps the regulation, keeps you in a comfortable state. There's no threat, you are calm and relaxed. If there is a nice music in the background, that will be stimulating your vestibulocochlear nerve, ocular connection with the person, the voice, exchange of information, emotional connection, maybe touch, connection with the hands. All of these experiences are down-regulating your vagus and changing the state you are, or improving the state you are for most part. Then if you're drinking something, the swallowing reflex is working here, glossopharyngeal nerve. If you're eating something, then clearly the sensory fibers within your esophagus, stomach, gut are working as well and sending, hopefully, a pleasurable message up saying, wow, this is really nice. So sometimes that doesn't happen, but let's focus on the positive scenario here. So that's why it's useful when you are there, just be observant. Some of us are being called neuro nerds because now as I enjoy my restaurant or bar experiences, not as often as I used to, but I see that in a different light. It is a vagal regulation there. And that really helps me understand even deeper and helps me understand my own body. And I can be more interoceptively aware of what is going on within me, how different sounds, how different movements, how different experiences affect me. Not to be overly self-absorbed, but being in a communication with another human, it is really, really important. Recently, we have more knowledge about the role of vagus nerve in an immune system, and that it's how it regulates the inflammation of the body. As a main parasympathetic system, what we do have here, the connection with different organs we mentioned already within the face, eyes, the throat, the mouth, the bronchs, the heart, esophagus, guts, kidneys, also going all the way down to the splanchnic nerve that feeds our pelvis and urogenital organs. So I think I'm going to pause here because I think, if this might be enough on vagus. Any questions on that? All clear? Gosh, that was amazing.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Do you ever then, if you're talking about using the eyes to orientate, using your voice, the tone of your voice to help dysregulate the vagus nerve, do you ever get clients to maybe hum, or because you were talking about the esophagus and gargling, but maybe humming or something like that? Have you ever used that as a technique?
Absolutely. You can use humming. As a matter of fact, there is a well-known intervention to downregulate the vagus, and it's been used in many traditions, across the world. So yeah, the humming sound, because it does come from the gut as well, and includes or engages all of these kind of nerves. It's very beneficial, and it can be done in any setting. So,
I guess it would be involving the diaphragm as well.
of course. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, so I think, yeah, any questions on polyvagal? I think I wanted to introduce, just connect some of that vagus and polyvagal. I think that they are together. It's a big discussion, but what I do find that if you apply particularly in therapeutic setting, understanding about the vagus, about the polyvagal theory, it's probably one of the best treatments you can offer a client. However, there are more things here as well that I've learned and I want to share with you. But clearly, this is really based off of a lot of successful treatments. I used, most of these techniques for decades now, and some clients respond differently, and that's what also needs to be respected. This attunement and co-regulation. It's fundamental, regardless of what I might think or know. It's really important to validate that and verify with the client and explore and work with that. Yeah, if you don't know how to touch another person or speak to another person, all the neurology in the world is not going to mean much, So just you need to kind of. That's the art and science. That's what I call some of my work and other people's work, art and science of touch or connection or treatment, because it is an artistic element to that as well as scientific element that needs to be. And some people work with metaphors better, with the symbols, with just if I'm going to be talking to someone about the vagal nuclei, they're just going to say, "I'll just get off with it." I'm not interested. My brain does not really doesn't want to understand it. But if I'm talking about the symbology, about the restaurant experience, they will totally understand what I'm talking about. So I think that's also us connecting with the clients in a way they can understand us. And particularly learning in this conference how the brain hemispheres are so different, and how important it's not only the vertical alignment and vertical regulation, which is bottom up and top down regulation that is mainly applied in therapeutic. But actually there is a lot more research now about this horizontal regulation. And some people have overactive right side of the brain, and other people left side of the brain. And in certain parts of, left parietal lobe, for example, we might talk about a Wernicke's area or Broca region that regulate the speech. They're not present in the right side, for example. So you might be speaking particular language or expression that someone cannot understand you if they don't have this part of the brain developed. And we see this often in children, that we don't have enough patience often, to engage in a valid communication with the child or another human being, and then we might just assume, they're just incompetent or stupid or not clever enough. But it might be that a particular part of the brain is not registering that. And what I'm seeing, there is more and more the brain fog, the confusion, the tiredness, the memory loss, and so on in adults. And so just being a little bit more knowledgeable and compassionate about particular parts of the brain will not necessarily perceive what you're saying or doing. Therefore, we need to have a greater repertoire of skills to share with other people. I think that's what the therapy, any therapy should be aiming for, rather than I have my set of skills that I learned 30 years ago and that's all I do. And that might be incredibly valuable, but we are seeing some modification in people's responses. And truth to be told, not all my interventions were extremely beneficial for every single client. For most, they have been, but some clients I could not help, the way I would have liked, and so on. So, but understanding that's the horizontal part of the brain, and that alignment is necessary. Not only that, there are brain networks as well, which are not related to different parts of the brain, but they're actually connections, these streams, like visual stream, like olfactory stream, like auditory stream, limbic stream, and so on. So there's a stream of kind of the highways is what would be the best word, that go across and are connected across different regions. And these streams also affect our perception and how we respond and how we see or actually how we perceive the reality or experience. And often I could not understand why my wife does not see something which is so obvious, or another human being. They see it differently. It's the same thing. And of course, we know that, people perceive differently. But, after these 5 days, I actually understood, knowing more about these different areas, brain areas, you understood that people definitely have a different experience, different perception of reality. And of course, they're going to understand it differently. So just having kind of understanding of that, and then some of these differences might excite other people, but might repel others as well. You might get really annoyed with someone not understanding you, and that it's not someone else's problem, that's my problem, really. If someone doesn't understand me and I'm getting pissed off about it, or frustrated, that is my own inability to actually have a deeper knowledge of what's happening in that situation, because I want to control it. I want to feel safe enough and right enough to be in my own stream of consciousness and awareness. And I think, at least that goes for me, if I'm going to be teaching and I'm teaching this work, I need to have more of a greater capacity. And I see some of us therapists and teachers, on different days we might be better. On some other days we might not be. So I think ongoing practice really is helpful. So I think I carry on a little bit with some extra talk here, but this is kind of a more of a prelude into emotions, which let me see, how do I share screen again? Oh, it's here. Here we go. Here we go. Okay, yeah, if you have questions, Chandani is here to moderate that. Okay, so what are the emotions? I have done. I kind of been studying this subject for just short time, about 15 years, quite extensively. And it's funny thing that consensus is not reached yet, totally. I mean, and emotions have been mentioned in all the cultures across the world, from ancient Egypt, Greeks, Romans, the Age of Enlightenment, and all throughout. And in recent times, I came across different researchers, and with some researchers I really agreed more, with others less. And I think what I'm here to admit that some of my convictions have been changed, and particularly with the Lisa Barrett, Feldman Barrett, I somehow her delivery never really stood with me. She often was very dismissive and very convinced about being so righteous about things. And but listening more of her, I came to like her more and respect a lot of her work. And and especially she swears as well, and I love that. She's kind of more delivering as more directly, and as a top scientist. So I'm going to share some of her work that recently I researched more, but also some other people's work. And just if you didn't know, I mean, there are, a vast amount of researchers been talking about emotions and researching emotions, like, again, including Darwin in 19th century, from William James, which I quoted a lot, the father of psychology in 1890s, early 1900s. He always talked about emotions preceding any thought patterns, and I really felt that within my own experience, and I really was convinced that's the way, and I thought that way. Then I learned that emotions, thoughts, sensations, all of that happen simultaneously, and then somehow our brain and system deciphers that and then delivers. Paul Ekman talked about faces and facial expressions, and there's a huge amount of research has been done. And then you do have people like what's the guy's Pluchnik, I think it's his name, and he talks about and I think it was in 80s and 90s, 1980 and 1990. He talked about 34,000 emotions. And I've never heard of that, and I personally could not fathom that number within me of the emotions. I know there is a complexity of different states. However, he did say that 8 are the most dominant, and so on, and so on. So there are a lot of researchers in different universities, and there are different proposal on emotional states and wheels of emotions and models, and circumplex model and vector model, and 6 emotional axes from MIT, and there are considerable level of research. However, despite all of that, we still don't have a scientific consensus on an exact definition. So something that might seem the closest to what I might consider emotions are physical and mental states brought on by neurophysiological changes variously associated with thoughts, feelings, behavioral responses, and degree of pleasure or displeasure. And yeah, I think we all can agree on that. That's the combination of our thoughts, because we can stimulate our sense of emotions through the thought patterns. It's not always that emotions come from within the body, as though that emotions are definitely biochemical responses and movements. Structural movements, even your posture will change, your expressions will change, your your state will change depending on different emotions. And I closely followed the HeartMath Institute, and they claimed about 1,400 emotions, 1,400 biochemical reactions are related to each emotion. So there was big research on that. And that to me explained difficulties that I experience with some clients as a naturopath, not necessarily as a trauma therapist. The people have dysfunctions in their gut, in their liver, in the muscular motor function, and so on. But if you're flooding your system with thousands of biochemical reactions, each time you have emotion, that is highly toxic. So often you see people eat the best food, all these restrictive diets and so on, but they still don't feel great. And then when you start going into the emotional states, you can see how much pollution is there happening. So I think it's useful to understand that, but it's not always bottom up experience. Often, if you think about particular memory, experience, thought, that can change and bring emotion into state. And so sensations in the body also will affect how you feel. And the sense of safety around you. I think also invisible forces, the day and night, the different frequencies that are around us that we consciously perceive and others unconsciously. They all can affect, how we are with emotions. So other people will talk that while emotions start as sensations in the body, feelings are generated from our thoughts about those emotions. So if you're talking about what the emotions are, the difference between emotions and feelings, some researchers, and not everyone agrees with this stuff. So but feelings are how we interpret emotions and let them sink in. We use the word feel for both physical and emotional states. Okay. The fundamental difference between feelings and emotions is that feelings are experienced consciously, while emotions manifest either consciously or subconsciously. Some people might spend years or even lifetime not understanding the depths of their emotions. And I think that's true for most of us. So these are some of the elements that I'd like you to kind of pay attention to. Emotions are a verb, not a noun. Okay? So, and I actually like that. That's I'm quoting Lisa Feldman Barrett here. And that's becoming more of my experience, also understanding the brain more and how and the body and how the complexity of this our experience is being grouped and categorized and experienced and understood. And so what we are understanding now that emotions are the categories, the group or they're groups of experiences, not one, but the vast groups of experiences that form emotion. And there is a lot of research been done recently on this. And so I'm just bringing you some of the new stuff here. And I had the difficulty and agreeing also that our brain mainly predicts the events based on the past, and within the context of emotions, that it's becoming most of the time correct. And some of the latest research really confirms that. It's not necessarily stimulus-driven organ. It's kind of represents particular features that happens. And not to go into the huge depths in here, which I'm also still understanding, but all our experience from our environment, but also from the surface of our skin entering deeper towards our center, towards that famous vagus nerve, and then, and remember, we're in 3 dimensions, and then going towards the brain stem and sending all the information into the all different parts of the brain, including cerebellum, including cortex, sensory motor apparatus, the prefrontal cortex, insula, thalamus, hypothalamus, all of these areas that actually are processing this experience. So what they talk about is the summaries of summaries, like multimodal summaries of your experience. And then why they had difficulties, for example, finding anger as a universal emotion, which was assumed, like Ekman had a very strong kind of following on that, and they went even with the different cultures, and some of the theory was challenged because people, don't always pull face in anger. We all know what silent anger is as well. I might be perfectly fine, but I might be boiling inside of me. So not every facial expression is related to particular emotions. It can be. As a matter of fact, they say only about 35% of the time that equates. And that's interesting, because if you are judging someone's expression, in any relationship or in connection, just based on facial expression, like 2 out of 3 times you might be wrong. And that in our close relationships can be lethal. Some of us know that. And so just being also, especially with the clients, you need to be a little bit more aware of that. And of course, culturally and developmentally, it's so conditioned. Okay. So what else I extracted here? I tried to bring the brain is re-implementing parts of the past that are similar to present, constructing categories of possible futures. It's a big word or sentence here. So re-implementing parts of the past, and they're constructing the categories that will predict the future. Largely extracting from the past experiences. And one of the things that I've learned again, but within the context of emotions, I learned this within the context of naturopathy and how your body functions, that we are the metabolic machines, basically, or let's not use the word machine, but systems that you will, your main focus for life is how do you regulate your metabolism. And metabolism is the level of oxygen, the blood pressure, nutrients, enzymes, biochemistry in your body, and so on. That's the main thing, why this life exists and can exist. And emotions sink into that in a way that's, different emotions secrete different or provoke different biochemicals. But not only that, some of my preconceived ideas or my experiences, not just preconceived ideas, my experience are being challenged over the last few weeks quite significantly. But also some of the theories that I read, like this 1,400 emotions that Heart Math Institute talked about. Chandani, can you see me as I speak?
Yeah.
Yeah, can you? Yeah, okay. So, do you know how many emotions, how many biochemical reactions are in each cell in each second? Can anyone guess? That's quite significant. So if you try to be precise, and scientists like to be precise, but this has a kind of multiple reason why I'm saying this, because we really do not appreciate how extraordinary, how cosmic we are. Because I'm going to hit you with some cosmic numbers here. Each cell produces, when I learned this, it was about billion biochemical reactions a second. One, that's one with 9 zeros behind it. But the problem is that there is new research saying there's from 9 to 10 billion in each cell. So that's 10 zeros behind it. But the problem is not that we have one cell here. We have somewhere from 30 to 100 trillion cells. So basically what is happening here in you right now, it's that you have somewhere between 30 or 100 billion trillion biochemical reactions right now, and again, and again, and again, and it keeps going. Guys, that is one with about 25 zeros behind it. So it is quite staggering and extraordinary. So really, for me, it is kind of scientific jargon. It helps me. It's useful because I feel so empowered by this knowledge. Like, my God, like there is like extraordinary power that I have within me, that you have within you. And I might feel, a bit uncomfortable. I might feel depressed. I might feel upset. I might feel victim, or any of these things. And you might feel the same thing. But if you understand that emotions are products of the brain's past predictions towards the future, you understand that we can change that too. You can genuinely appreciate if you have a food poisoning, or someone injured you physically or verbally or emotionally. Yeah, that is going to affect you. But you can lean on the rest of the billions and trillions of other reactions that are happening within you. That, to me, in my own brain, it's just extraordinary. I'm still confused by that. I'm still overwhelmed by that. But within me, in my chest, I feel extraordinary power. As I speak, as I can grasp that, and I can't fully grasp it. Anyhow, let me not get overly excited, but I'd like to carry on with the presentation. But just I want you to really appreciate that. And any illness that we might have and any challenges, all of that is okay. And I do believe, and I'm speaking from experience, I had some extremely complex and difficult illnesses. But as you transform that, you become stronger, and you definitely do, because some of the bases of who we are really supporting all of that. And not to want to diminish that some people suffer terribly, they are suffering terribly, absolutely, it's extraordinary. But still, despite all of that, we are alive, and we have a chance to grow from that and to evolve. Okay, so the brain, the signal processor, predictor, assembling set of features, snapshots. And the word I wanted to bring here, it's the dynamic. All of that is dynamic. Yeah, it's not static, it's dynamic. Gosh, I'm gonna be, it's so much more to cover here. So, then when you learn about 4 compression gradients in the brain, and then you have 6 layers of neurons in each part of the brain, which means these pathways through which this information moves, they are like more quantum, they are not linear. And that's why often we might experience same event, but or we are living same event, but we're experiencing different emotions, because or you're doing a TRE or some other form of exercise or some other therapy, but your experience is different, because these gradients and these depths of our anatomical structures, the brain structures, and this granularity, as they call it, or ability to decipher the emotional states is so huge. So we really have no choice but to engage with it. I mean, you can ignore it totally, but if you engage, I mean, the effect and results are extraordinary. And also, the more we know, we can engage smarter and more effectively as well, because often we engage in not the most effective way, often in debilitating way, in ways that are not as helpful. And then merry goes around, we fall back into the same old pattern. But there is a lot of science and a lot of work we are uncovering and developing it, and we already have some skills to help this more profound transformation. And one of the beautiful things here is that emotions are a recipe for action. Yeah, because emotions themselves are movement internally. There is form of action. And then, final common pathway is a movement. Okay, so we do like movement. I mean, life is a movement. Even if you're still, there is this dynamic vibration and movement within us and pulsation. So just relying on that and working with that. And just to briefly add within these gradients of the brain and neuronal perception, that high dimensional signals coming to the brain are reducing in every synapses what is actually happening. It's adaptive pathways. So, which means that experience that you might have might be large and vast, but as it comes closer from the periphery towards the center, towards our understanding, it's been filtered. Yeah, so it becomes more clearer what is happening. And that's beautiful because you can modify that. You can engage and modify it. Okay, should we feel, okay, so Chandani, do you want to jump in here and maybe say something about that? I'm not going to finish for 7. It's impossible. I'll carry on and you guys just stay with me or not. But I'm not going to stop because it's too exciting. It's too good what I'm sharing. So I apologize. It's a change of, let's be flexible. You know, that's what also this whole lecture is about, flexibility. You know, rigidity of emotional state, feelings, sensations, really, where does it bring you? It doesn't bring you to a good place. Can this come out, please? Okay. And what the question?
The video.
Sorry?
Are you saying about the video?
Yes. Would you?
Yeah. Okay.
Because just to put the context here.
Yeah.
I've been asked a number of times, do we feel emotions or not? You know, in a therapeutic process, do you really go deeper? Do you engage emotions with emotions or not? And often my approach would be to embrace emotions, and teaching emotional intelligence and how you engage through the body and locate it in the body would suggest for you to engage with emotions. But not everyone agrees with that, and also depends on the context. So Chandani and me kind of discussed specific video here, and I'm just going to bring you some more science on that.
Okay. Let me just get it out.
And then I've got more of the myths or convictions to be challenged.
Share screen.
How are we doing so far? Any good?
Can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay. How do I get this to? Okay. Thing in the bottom is in the way of my.
Okay, let me try.
That's all right. Got it. Right. Can you hear it?
There's no sound, Cheda.
No sound. Sorry.
No.
Did I do something silly? Green share. Oh yeah, sorry, share sound. That would help. Okay.
Hmm.
There we go.
I'm probably going against most coaches at the moment, but please stop naming your emotions. Please stop it. That part of your nervous system does not like words at all. When you're heightened, usually your limbic system shuts down your Broca region. So the fact that you're trying to name it is going against your most natural self. If you want to process an emotion, naming it while you're heightened is one of the worst things that you could be doing. So instead, I'm inviting you to feel safe, to feel that emotion exactly as it is, okay? To be with yourself throughout, as if you're a child and you need some tender loving care and a big hug. So that's how you process it. I don't want you to write it down. I don't want you to name it. That is all part of intellectualizing. That brings you back to the cognitive, and it's not what we want. We want to keep it in the body and to release it through the body. So make sure that instead you do things that you can find in captions. Have a look.
Great.
So basically, I sent Cheda this video to ask his opinion, because in TRE especially, I think we do, to some degree, want to engage with naming emotions and knowing what's happening to someone in their body. So yeah, it's an interesting inquiry.
And I think some of us come from different backgrounds, and people really don't work with that, and they definitely don't want to connect with that, and so on. So I elaborated this a little bit more, because she mentions Broca region, and she mentioned limbic system. So if you're talking about neuroanatomy, let's talk about it then. And so I prepared for you a little bit of understanding what that means. Okay, let's try this. Yeah, and there's some gems here, but some of you, I'm going to come to that later on. Bessel van der Kolk, one of my teachers, and also I've got his books here. Remember, a body keeps the score, but actually doesn't. And so to me, to change, and I've been working on that body keeps the score kind of a gig for 20 years, really. And I will explain how is that. But let me but because it's linked to this, what this woman said. And here we go. Why is it so small, this? Okay. So she mentioned Broca regions, yeah? And we all know when you're talking about emotions, they are part of this limbic cortex or limbic brain area, where part of the limbic brain is amygdala, insula, hypothalamus, thalamus, anterior cingulate complex, as well as the hippocampus and other regions there, sensory cortex. All of that is involved in translating these sensations, what Barrett was called this granulation of this wave of the experience coming towards these regions from periphery. So it's not only related to limbic system, because in order to hit the limbic system needs to come through the brainstem as well. Yes, and also if it's coming from the periphery, it can go through the prefrontal cortex, through the occipital lobe, and so on. Because your eyes, you do not see with your eyes, by the way. You know, you got your eyes, but your eyes do not see what I'm doing right now. Your visual cortex, which is in your occiput at the back of your brain, is actually seeing what you're seeing. Okay? When you touch your finger here, yeah, your finger or these receptors here are not feeling that touch. It's the part of my brain that, and your brain, that is feeling that touch. Okay, so, and very simply, some of you might have woken up one day or been in a situation where your lower back or some part of the body was in so much pain that you could not move. Yeah, you felt broken, you felt really damaged. If that's true, after taking a painkiller, some of that pain goes away, or often most of the pain goes away. So if it's true that that perception of the brain, it's correct, doesn't matter if I take the painkiller or not, because my finger would feel that pain, my lower back would feel that pain. But because my brain feels the pain, okay, that means that we can modify that either with the painkiller or with the movement or with therapeutic intervention or whatever. So just to confuse you a little bit about this and open some other areas here. So when you talk about emotions, they are not only related to the limbic system, and I learned this recently myself, so I'm just going to share stuff with you here. So Broca area, you got the Wernicke and the Broca area that are involved in the language understanding and expression. So Broca area is the part of the prefrontal cortex or premotor cortex that regulates the way we speak, how we express the language. Okay, and you can see it here. I've got it. Unfortunately, it's not as big, and I can't open it up bigger. It's not, you know. Anyway, and this Brodmann areas mean it's a guy, the German neuroscientist in early 1900s. He mapped all the Brodmann areas, and there are 48 in the brain, or up to 52, but that's in animals. So mainly 48 Brodmann areas, and 44 and 45 at the Broca area. And Broca area was another neuroscientist, French neuroscientist, who discovered this and the linguistic, and you know, some of these geniuses were working for centuries on this stuff. And so further, when you go, that understand the function, and then you got the right hemisphere of the Broca area 45, for example. Adds here, it's putting emotion into speech. Parietal areas more involved with language understanding, interpreting tone of voice. Okay? If it's emotionally appropriate situation. Okay? So it's not, that's the right hemisphere, for example. And talks about or metaphors. See, that's not a language necessarily. That's another brain region that actually regulates that. The mirror neurons, the movements, response inhibition, affective prosody of the voice, so the tone of voice, facial expression to convey the emotions, it's also involved with that part. While you got the left hemisphere, it talks about the speech. It's more kind of categorizes the speech and so on. It's got language, it's got other things. But what we are semantics, phonetics, speech articulation, selection of information from competing sources, and grammatic processing and so on, all of that is happening in that left side. So to say that Broca region only it's related to the language, it's not totally correct. It's partially correct. Okay, but also knowing that your Broca region 45 and 44 also are connected anatomically with the part of the somatosensory cortex. Okay, and they are leaning also onto the anterior cingulate complex, which is the limbic part of the brain. So you can't totally decipher that and say, no, that's only, so someone is lying down and or sitting down and experiencing emotion. Let's not talk about this, because depends on the context, that might not be appropriate to go into the linguistics of that, obviously, but maybe naming, feeling emotion and experiencing that might be the way. But for some people, might be really useful to name it, to describe it, to try to engage the right hemisphere of the brain. That's what I'm talking about, that the horizontal integration. Okay, and then we heard that women are smarter than men, and then the Broca's area, it's 20% larger in women. So, there is some cognitive part that's, female brain is different than male brain as well. And that's interesting. I didn't know this figure, so I just wanted to share this with you. The 44 area, it's behind it as well, and so you also have the range of functions that, for example, expression of emotional information, it's in this area. Okay, so it's not just about, it's more complex than this. Okay, and then you got Warnke area, which is posterior part, parietal part. And that's another French neuroscientist as well. He also talked about your ability to comprehend language. So see, the Broca is about you expressing, and Warnke is about you comprehending. And clearly there is some crossovers there as well. But also 39 and 40 area, and I think it's 22 or 22, I think, of the Warnke. They're also very closely related to the visual cortex posterior, and also to the prelimbic system as well. And prelimbic system is emotional system. But also the part of this is about related to default mode network, which is humming in the background at all time. And it's multimodal activities, measures the multimodal activities of the independent of and it's independent of external stimuli, and helps with the awareness. Even out of body experience, some of that can be related to. And we're talking language. Okay? Left hemisphere, reflective self-awareness. Okay? And self-awareness is born in insular cortex, which is limbic system, but there is a connection with other areas as well. But at the same time, arithmetical calculations, numerical facts, technical competencies, etc., etc., etc. Okay. The right hemisphere, spatial focusing. Action sequencing, and so on. Number 40. Again, so more or less, not to go into each one of them, but they're all involved with the more complex responses, but which responses include also self-reflection, self-awareness, and emotional awareness and perception of the event. Okay. Okay. So let me just close with my presentation, but definitely like to hear your questions and the reflections as well. So unfortunately, the Bessel-van der Kolk tells us half of the truth, not the whole truth. both of his books here, just to say, respect the guy. I met him, I studied with him as well. This is in English, this is in Italian. Yes, but it was interesting to hear that your brain keeps the score, but body keeps the scorecard. Okay, so often, and this is so related to emotions when we talk about the molecules of emotions, and the Candice Perth, talked about this decades ago. And when we talk about, okay, feel your emotions in your chest, in your diaphragm, and I'm so big on that. But you need to understand that it's a scorecard, that is the positioning of those experiences which are they still remain in that area. Yeah, and they're connected through interoception and through, the proprioceptors, interoceptors, and other receptors. But the brain, the different parts of the brain, as we just observed briefly, regulates all of that. The brain keeps the score, keeps the old memory, and predicts the future, and then gives us the context, the emotional context, sensations, and all of these other things, including the thoughts. Okay, so this is really useful to kind of perceive. And again, I'm not claiming absolute truth on this, but this really, really makes so much more sense. And the other thing that I really liked within this research on Lisa Feldman, it's what you experience as reality. It's not the world alone and not in your head alone. It's a transaction in between the two. Yeah. Often we would think, oh, it's all in your head. Or, no, experience is out there. As a matter of fact, it's in this connection. This is such a profound thing, what I'm going to say. It's really that how you connect with the world, that's your reality. And your perception is there, really, how you connect, how you perceive the world, and how you connect, how you filter the information, and how you engage with the world. And through the engagement, you change the world. You don't stay in your head alone, on your past alone, in your old perceptions. The more you engage, obviously timely, with the resources, with capacity, you are expanding your reality, you're expanding your experience. But and your transaction, or reality as your transaction, is becoming a lot more valuable and a lot more profound. And probably last two things. This is also the other thing which disturbed me a little bit. Interception is what your brain believes is true for your body. Okay, and we are big on interoception. Interoception is so important because it does change the shifts of how you feel, how you experience world. And that's how you change your emotions and your brain and all of that. But the word that the interoception is what your brain believes is true for your body. It's quite powerful. It might not be the total truth there. It's actually how my brain perceives. So all of that granulation, all of that kind of filtering of the information that comes, my past experiences, my conditioning, my survival, all of these things are happening simultaneously here, and then interoceptively I'm perceiving this to be inflammation or pleasure, excitement or pain, anger or fear, or all of that. And we can change that, so which means we need to engage more with that. And again, going back to the metabolic, that depression also, there are a lot of research on depression is actually whole body inflammation. So we know this through naturopathic work and medical work, that your body is totally inflamed, and it's actually in this fight and break and shut down in continuously. So, which means that metabolically you're in a deficit. You're wasting vast amount of energy, oxygen, and nutrients in order to anticipate positive outcome of the future. And that to me also is very profound to understand. It's not about your current state, but it's about this inner future anticipation. The problem with that is that what I'm learning with the brain, that if you're feeling bad, you can't perceive options to feel better. And parts of your brain, as I mentioned before, cannot perceive how the change, cannot predict that. And that's why some people stay very deeply in for long periods of time in that state. Okay, so how to regulate emotions. This is also from top researchers, scientists. They just talk common sense here. Sleep, movement, nutrition. These are the basis for mental health or of mental health. Sun, nature, and social connection, I'm adding to that as well. So if you are in a therapeutic session, you're co-regulating with someone, that's a great emotional regulation. If someone is trusting you, you're really hitting the deep foundation, and in that way you might be changing the past predictions of the brain, the past experiences, to go towards the better prediction. If you're synchronizing your breath, so you're sitting with the client and you're asking them how they breathe, and you naturally synchronize the breath. Yeah. Your diaphragms can often synchronize. Do you know how many diaphragmatic movements are in a day? Your movements are synchronized. So you don't need to do huge amount of movements. You're moving with your diaphragm. That's anywhere from 24 to 30,000 diaphragmatic or breaths a day. So that's a lot. So if you're synchronizing in a short session with the client, that is very beneficial. Heart synchronization. We also know through the HeartMath Institute that you're sitting with someone and your hearts will synchronize as well. How many cardiac motions do we have a day? Do we know that? 120,000. You're sitting with another human being. Your viscera changes. There are organs that have their own motility. It's called the movements. Also the vibrations, the pulsations, the tremors that are in the body. All of that is being affected. And something really useful to understand, that there is a leader and a pacer. Okay, and we learned some of this, but now we know neurologically that people connect with another because they need the leader in that particular moment, and that's related to the trust. They go to therapists because they need the leader. Okay, for that particular moment, you need the leader. What's the woman that talks about the vulnerability? Texan woman that she's very famous. Oh gosh, I read her books. The vulnerability.
Is it Brene Brown?
Yes, Brene Brown. Thank you. Yeah, she talks about that also. That you have to have a containment because the clients will. The mirror you and so on, but also understanding in your own relationships that you can't always be a leader, you can't always be a pacer. You in life, the roles do change, and somehow that is part of the co-regulation. And even with the client, you might be leading, but allow them then sometimes to feel empowered and to take charge, particularly for their own experience, particularly for their own emotional or physiological state, if possible. Anyway, so I think these are the sharings that I wanted to do, and I particularly liked what Barrett's husband mentioned. Other people's opinions of you are just electrical activity in someone's head. I quite like that. So anyway, I'd like to stop for There is more, but I think it's more than enough. I think I shared here. So I'd like to stop here and welcome any questions, any reflections, any disagreements, any challenges, whatever you like. Feel free.
Cheda, I've got a question on, that lady that was talking about, I was just thinking if you're working as a therapist with somebody and she's saying, I get that she's saying when you start to talk about the feelings and that is not the way to work with it because it sort of gets cognitive rather than in the body. But how else would you communicate to the other person? I'm not sure whether she meant just if you're on your own, you can just feel your emotions. I think she sort of said, do you know what I mean? If then you with somebody, then you would ask them, well, how do you feel in the body? And then
I think she mentioned in therapeutic settings that you should not ask your
I'm
client.
not sure whether I'm not sure whether she did say that, but
She did. So my point when I went through that neurology is that you simultaneously actually it's impossible for you just to feel emotions, because all the other brain regions are connected. They might be shut down to some extent and not engaged, but they're there, they are present. So I think skill and arts and science of therapy should be depends on the context, what that client needs. She might just need to explore the emotions, or she might need to engage more cognitive and open. She might need to move the body as well, or just to move the body, or have a metaphor, have a symbolism about this. Also, we talked about neuroscience within this, but I forgot also to mention, with a huge respect to indigenous cultures, none of that they talk about, but they have a deep symbolism and traditional knowledge that often supersedes some of our neuroscience. So just, depending on the context, you adapt. But this notion of separation, to me, that sounded like Broca area, it's only this, and the limbic is only this, and to me, it's not total truth. So I wanted to bring more truth out there. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah. You're saying it's not just the one area you're looking at, but you're all connected, different parts of the brain and stuff's happening holistically rather than not talking about it, which might be part of the therapy anyway, but just because I guess we need to know what's happening in the body.
True. And often probably people override mentally a lot of their inner states. And I think maybe in the context of that, I would totally agree with her.
Okay.
People are overriding and talking all the time, because if you're talking all the time, you can't really feel much. It's
okay.
Just, or you of course you are feeling, just you're not aware of the feelings. This is also the thing. Slowing it down a bit, you're just pausing a bit and being aware of patterns of movements, of thoughts, feelings, sensations. I think that's the value, and then expressing what's adequate, appropriate for you in a given moment.
I think she's saying not to overthink it or over intellectualize it, to feel it. I don't know. I think that's what she meant. I'm not sure.
Okay, good. Thank you. Anyone else? Any other comments or reflections or questions?
Hi, Cheda, it's Rob here. We spoke last week, so thanks again for your time. There's just one thing really at the beginning of the session you mentioned about emotions, and just from my own experience, I can recognise how emotions become a parachute to recovery. Maybe is a good way of putting it. I haven't done my training yet for TRE provider. I do practice TRE. So TRE can obviously help with easing tension. It can help with the lymphatic system. Are you able to put in words how TRE can help on an emotional level and how that may work?
So a lot of our emotions have not been embraced or acknowledged or connected with. And and a lot of that expression stays in the body. So some of the emotions might be goes through the protection, defense mechanism, contractions, and these kind of expressions. So with TRE, you have to connect with your body. You're connecting with those involuntary innate movements that are part of that deeper matrix that holds these movements and expressions within us. And the more you understand, the more you soften, the more you engage with your own body, you're engaging directly with some of this emotional content that might not be embraced in the past. And often the words might not, serve justice to TRE. That is attention, stress, trauma release exercise, because that definitely is a part that it releases the excess charge, tension, even trauma from the body in a way that it's been accumulated, but also helps you reconnect with parts of you that have been frozen or disconnected in moments of shock, trauma, or high stress. So that's how again, multimodal way of connecting with your emotions, with your body, with your expressions, with the complexity, with your whole experience. And then you'll see later on the experiences that you live through, you'll have a different perspective on them because you engaged in a different way. You open, things, and you connected with things that's been disconnected from you.
And perhaps bringing a greater awareness to parts of the body that you hadn't realised tension maybe been stored. Yeah,
exactly.
So final question, before I let somebody else come in. Dates for next year for your TRE, when would they be released? Do you know?
By September.
Okay, cool. Brilliant. Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thanks. Anyone else? Okay, if not.
Cheda, I was just going to ask you if you about maybe this is not, maybe you haven't got time, or there's a different time that you would do it, but calming the vagal nerve, the ways to do that, different, maybe breathing and different things, how to calm that, to help calm the body.
Yes.
I don't know whether you go into something another time, or
I did mention that the first part of the talk, just engaging those cranial nerves in with their functionality, so through tone of voice and
okay,
the
breathing
exactly, and engaging facial muscles, movements,
right, yeah,
social engagement, connection, listening to the nice sounds and music, all of that.
Yeah, okay,
cool. Okay, so Chandani, I think we might be closing this lovely session down. Went extra time, but it was a big one, so
Yeah, perfect.
Any comments from you?
I'm going to need to integrate a lot of that myself. No, it's great. It's really, really helpful. And I mean, the thing that I think I've observed within you as a teacher, and when I've been to your groups and things, is you have a great ability to create a ventral vagal, activate that pathway, whether that's through a joke or checking, it's just a really, sometimes what we need is so subtle, just to shift us into that state. And I think that's a really beautiful thing that we can all do more of, when we understand even just basic polyvagal theory and the vagus nerve.
Yeah, great. Giving you more. I mean, there is more, and I'm excited about the future because, we need to update the game. People need us. We need ourselves. And guys, 100 billion trillion biochemical in our body right now. I mean, it's just beyond any comprehension, honestly. So on that note, I love you and leave you. Take care all, and I'll see you next month. All the best.
Thanks, Cheda. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Cheers.